The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great pleasure today to rise in the House and to debate Bill C-7. I do want to start with thanking our RCMP members in my riding at Caribou, Prince George, as well as my honourable colleague from Yellowhead for his 35 years of service. Mr. Speaker, I would like you to know as well, too, and it to be on record, that I was an RCMP brat. My stepfather served in the RCMP, and which meant that I saw many of the communities and small communities from tip to tail in British Columbia. Our RCMP are our moms, dads, sisters, brothers. They're volunteers in their communities. They coach minor sports. They work with charities. They contribute to the health and wellness of our communities, not just when they have the uniform on, but every day. The men and women of the force put their uniforms on and they go to work every day knowing full well that they'll experience human tragedy, and that they know full well that their lives may be placed in danger just so you and I and our families can sleep well at night. They are our silent sentinels. The RCMP, the legend of the Mountie, is well known. Always getting their man, Dudley Do-Right, and my favorite superhero, Captain Canuck, who by day is a mild-mannered RCMP and by night he is fighting evildoers. The red serge and the campaign hat are representatives of our proud country. Core values of integrity, honesty, professionalism, respect, and accountability are what our members of our force back in 1873, the 150 first recruits, and now the 28,461 members strong carry. As I said earlier, my stepfather was an RCMP. And he told me long ago that it was not because of the great wage of that time, but it was because of the proud and the respect of the force. It is internationally recognized. The musical ride. I too have traveled with Mounties from coast to coast and overseas as well in my travels in representing Canada. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the lineups to get the photos with the Mounties are always the longest at every event. But today our forces, all 2,800 and 461 of them, are at capacity. There's a 30% disparity with their unionized counterparts. They are facing increasingly challenging times. An average citizen may expect or experience 1 to 2 traumatic events in their lifetime, whereas a police officer may experience up to 600 to 900 traumatic events over the course of their career. A recent study shows that over the course of a 20-year career, as I said, over 900 traumatic incidents our RCMP members will face, our police forces will face. Over 30% of our police force are suffering from PTSD. Mr. Speaker, we need to break the stigma. We need to give confidence that our men and women can come forward and report issues, whether it's harassment, whether it's PTSD. We need to give confidence that they can ask for help. And, Mr. Speaker, we need to give the organization and the management, the families, the resources for training so that we don't unnecessarily lose another life. Mr. Speaker, we're here to talk about Bill C-7. And about a secret ballot, about allowing those that put their lives in danger every day the democratic right for a secret ballot without fear of intimidation or reprisal. Regardless of what policy reads, Labour policy reads, as my honourable colleague from across the way have said, fear and intimidation happen. Whether it's in our RCMP force, our police forces, our firefighters, our regular everyday work forces, fear and intimidation of some sort does happen. harassment and intimidation takes place. Mr. Speaker, our Conservative stance is that we support the Supreme Court decision, and we stand with our men and women on the front line. But we believe those who risk their lives every day deserve the democratic right to vote free of intimidation and reprisal. Mr. Speaker, over the last couple of days, I've been accused of being against unions and against our frontline members, and this couldn't be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. Over my time, I belonged to 5 unions, and I believe that they have a right in today's work environment. And I also believe that my bill C-211 that calls for a national framework to deal with PTSD for our first responders, our RCMP members, our veterans, our corrections officers, our firefighters, speaks for itself and speaks for my belief and my stance for those that put their lives in danger every day. Mr. Speaker, communities in my riding are facing increased costs associated with policing. They're struggling to be able to appropriately fund our police forces. Whether it's overtime due to illness, injury, or lack of resources, meaning members and bodies, we are struggling. Just in my community of Williams Lake, to the south of Prince George, we have an ongoing issue with gang violence. Just last night, I was meeting with the Minister Goodale on this issue. Just one tactic of combating this issue that we have, asking for 3 additional members. That means an increased tax hike of 2% on an economy that is already stressed. On an economy, on a mayor, on a council, on a town that is facing challenging times already as it is, but one that is gripped in fear of the increasingly violent activities of these gangs. Mr. Speaker, we need to give the resources for our police forces, for our frontline members, for our management. We need to be able to give them the opportunity to vote free of fear, of reprisal. Amending Bill 7 to allow for the democratic right to a vote is the right thing to do. Consulting with municipalities who ultimately bear the costs of policing so that the resources necessary to fulfill the agreements that ultimately either being unionized or being negotiated are in place is the responsible thing to do. Giving the resources for our communities, giving the resources for our management and our police force is the right thing to do. But we face challenging times, Mr. Speaker. We have a government that doesn't believe that giving a democratic vote or giving a voice to those who put their lives in danger is the right thing to do. So I will not be supporting this bill. But I do hope that it can get to committee so that this government can do the right thing. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I was very disappointed to hear that the member from Caribou, Prince George, has already made up his mind and determined that he will not support Bill C-7 when it has not even been at committee to be reviewed. So I think that's very surprising, considering his very eloquent remarks in terms of the rich tapestry and history of the RCMP and his deep regard for the forces. Our government is respecting the Supreme Court ruling that respects the right to be represented in bargaining by members and reservists of the RCMP, and that's exactly what this bill is all about. The members' concerns are actually about another bill, which is C-4, which rolls back changes that were made without any consultation in Bill C 525 that would force one single, one-size-fits-all bargaining system on the Public Service Labor Relations Board. Now, why would the member want that when what he is wanting a vote free of reprisal? It's exactly what the purpose of the board is. They have the tools to ensure that. They have options for how to implement a vote. They have laws that support the freedom from any intimidation. They have penalties and orders that they can impose. They review a vote, whether it's done by card check or mandatory vote or secret ballot. Why would the minister want the member want a one-size-fits-all approach and prejudge this very important legislation and be prepared to vote against a legislation that is all about respecting the members of the RCMP?
The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, we trust our men and women of the RCMP to make life and death decisions every day. We trust that through their training and that their courage, that they will run towards danger when others run in opposite directions. So, Mr. Speaker, I have a hard time understanding why we would not trust that they are capable of making or having a secret ballot vote and voting in favor or against a union.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Yellowhead. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, I was in the wrong seat. I'm honourable friend from Prince George. In your travels throughout your riding, and I noticed you mentioned Williams Lake, and that was my first posting, and it was a busy community back.
I just want to remind the honourable member to place his questions through the chair, not directly to the other members. Thank you.
Okay. To the member from Prince George, I apologize, Mr. Speaker. A little motion there, and I wanted to get back to it. Anyways, in your travels throughout your riding, you have a number of large communities in the Prince George area. And have you spoken with community leaders in those areas, and are they concerned of the impact of the RCMP unionizing as to the physical costs that they will be impacted upon?
The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
Thank you to my honourable colleague from Yellowhead. I have met with our mayors and council and our regional leaders as late as Saturday of last week. And not speaking specifically to unionization, but speaking specifically to the rising costs and concerns of policing and being able to adequately staff. I have spoke with RCMP leadership as well as frontline staff, and that are taxed at capacity and are concerned. Mr. Speaker, we have a duty. The folks in this House have a duty to allow people to freedom of choice for their workplace environment. The democratic right to vote by secret ballot is inherent, and we should be accepting of that and respecting that. There are 28,461 members, and allowing a single board to make the decision for all of them is unacceptable.